Wait for me, wait for me, croaked the poor frog. I can't run as fast as you can. And he hopped along behind, trying to catch up with the princess. She did not turn round, but just kept on running. The frog was very sad, but he did not give up, and taking his time, made his way to the castle. The next day, the young princess was sitting at dinner with the king, his courtiers, and her sisters, the other princesses. As she ate from her little golden plate, the frog found his way into the hall of the castle. Although he was very tired, it having taken him a day and a night to hop from the lake, he somehow found the strength to give a last few hops up the marble staircase. When he got to the top, he knocked on the door of the dining room. "Youngest princess, open the door for me," he cried. The princess ran to the door to see who was calling her. When she saw that it was the frog, she was afraid. She slammed the door shut quickly and went back to her place at the dining table. The king saw his daughter was afraid. "My child, what has frightened you?" he asked. "Is there a giant outside the door who wishes to carry you away?" Oh, no, dear father," replied the princess. "There is no giant outside the door, only a horrible, slimy frog." Everyone round the table laughed. The king put down his wine. "What does the frog want with you?" he asked. Then the princess told her father what had happened in the forest the day before. The king's face grew concerned. "I promised him that he could live with me," his youngest daughter cried, "but I never thought he would come this far from the water." Just then, another knock was heard on the door, and a voice cried out, "Youngest princess, hear me call. Remember you lost your golden ball as you played by yourself beside the pool. I dived into the waters cool, and your ball I found and returned to you. Now please remember your promise true, to take me along to live with you." There was silence in the room. Finally, the king looked at his daughter evenly. "When a promise is made, it must be kept," he said. "Go and open the door." The youngest princess went and opened the door. As she returned to her chair, the frog hopped behind her. When she sat down, the frog said, "Put me on the table beside you, please." The princess hesitated, but a look from her father told her that she should do as the frog asked. When the frog was on the table, he said to the princess, "Please push your little golden plate nearer to me. Then we can eat together from the same plate." The princess did so, but very unwillingly. She barely touched her food, and each mouthful seemed to choke her. The frog, however, enjoyed every bite he ate. When he had finished eating, the frog turned to the princess and said, "Now I am tired. Please take me to your room, and we will lie on your little silken bed and go to sleep." At that, the youngest princess burst into tears. She did not like to touch the cold little frog, and she could not bear to think of him beside her in her own bed. Then the king grew angry and spoke sternly to his daughter. "If someone helps you when you're in trouble," he said, "you cannot afterwards turn your back on him. Take the frog with you to your room." So the princess picked up the frog and took him to her room. When she arrived at her bedchamber, the princess put the frog down as far away as possible from her bed. "I don't want you near me," she muttered as she placed him in the corner of the room. Then she got into her silken bed and turned her back on him. Once more the frog spoke up. "I too am tired," he said. "I want to sleep beside you on your silken sheets. Please lift me up." The princess felt desperately unhappy, and she began to weep. "If you do not lift me up into your bed," went on the frog, "I shall have to tell the king, your father." The princess knew she had no choice, for her father would insist that she kept her promise. So with tears running down her face, she picked up the frog, climbed back into her bed, and put him on the silken pillow beside her. She closed her eyes for a moment. A feeling of such horror filled her, she thought she would have to run away. Then, as she opened her eyes, there to her amazement was a handsome prince. Not only was he handsome, but he had a kind face. He smiled gently at the startled princess. He told her how he had had a spell put on him by a wicked witch and been turned into a frog. The spell could only be broken if a beautiful princess would take the frog as her companion, live with him, eat with him, and sleep with him. The prince told the princess how he had often watched her playing with her golden ball in the forest and how he had fallen in love with her. "Dear princess, will you marry me?" The princess looked into his kind face and agreed to marry him. Then, hand in hand, they went to tell the king what had happened. The next day, the young couple set off in a carriage driven by 6 white horses. They travelled to the kingdom of the prince's father. When they arrived, there was great rejoicing at the return of the prince, who had not been seen for many years. The prince's father was very glad to see his son and relieved that he was not a frog. Sometime later, the prince and princess were married. And, as you can imagine, they lived happily ever after. At their wedding, the princess's father brought with him, as one of his gifts, the golden ball, which he had mounted on a purple cushion and enclosed in a glass case. "My little princess and the frog," he said as he gave it to her. The princess smiled. And it is still kept in the castle today, except, like the pea, we borrowed it for a while. I hope you enjoyed these princess stories. I've certainly enjoyed telling them to you. Goodbye.